Now, once you know and have done the work on pages 9, 10, and 11 back there, you can use this tool called break-even analysis. Now, it's defined up there, but just generally, what is break-even? When you've gotten your original money back, when your cost is equal, yeah, I like to define it as the point during an operating period when total revenue equals total cost. Is that kind of an important thing to know? An important thing to be able to anticipate? So we're going to play with that just a little bit here. Have you guys ever calculated break-even? Have you ever priced things based on break-even? And by the way, when we're talking about pricing products, knowing your total cost based on doing the product costing work, that's important, right? But what else do you need to know before you go out and price your products and offer them out there generally in the public for sale? Market. You need to know about the market. And those are really the two ends of a pricing analysis, right? What's in the market, and when we price and position based on certain positioning relative to other competitors and things like that, and what's our total cost? And what we're really trying to do is optimize that, right? Let's go through the mechanics first and describe the variables in a break-even calculation, okay? Key components, first of all, is the selling price per unit. We're going to call that P. And this is kind of the next chunk of information. I think it's pretty much written out for you there already, is it? Yeah. Unit price or selling price P. You add up all your variable costs per unit, and we're going to call that VC, per unit. Now, I am going to tell you, and if you jump to the bottom of the page and just write this down, there's something that asks you kind of what's a simplification you need to make when you're doing break-even analysis. Well, the simplification is that costs are either fixed or variable. You see that? Is that on that page or is it on a subsequent page? Yeah, just write that down at the bottom of this page. That's fine. You have to make a determination that costs are either fixed or variable. There's really no semi-variable. If there is a semi-variable, you have to break it into its fixed and variable components to make this work right. It is a simplification, but this is guiding information. All right. The next part you need to know is your contribution margin, which is simply price minus variable cost per unit. So if my selling price of a kid's bike is $150 and my variable cost per unit is $100, what's my contribution margin per unit? $50, right? Contributes to what? Why do we call it contribution margin?
Profit.
Well, first, before it can contribute to profit, what does it need to contribute to? It needs to cover fixed costs, right? And then it contributes to profit. So the other thing we need to know is we need to know what our fixed costs are. So far, so good? Yay. So the basic idea, you have a chart on the bottom of your page, is that in a given operating period, let's say a month, your fixed costs are the same, regardless of how many units you sell, basically. So you're basically starting off the month, what? Making money or losing money? Losing money. But now you start to sell stuff. Well, your actual total cost curve as you start to sell stuff is going to go up at a rate of variable cost per unit. But it's got the starting point of fixed costs. All right? Your revenue curve actually starts at 0 and rises at a rate of what?
Sales.
Yep. Price per unit, good, times the number of units you sell. And where those two lines cross is break even. Now, here's something I'd like you to add to that chart. Before you break even, up to the point where you break even, are you making money or losing money? So in this area right here, right, losing money, loss. After you've broken even, what does this contribute to over here? What's this? Profit. Does that make sense? So depending on how you're trying to look at break even, there's three calculations. You guys are going to use these here in just a couple minutes. So let's take a look at those three calculations, the three ways of calculating this. First of all, when we talk about the number of units it takes to break even, that is your total fixed cost amount divided by price minus variable cost. And what I want you to do is to write these components here in that first equation section there in the middle of that page. The second equation is you take the units from this first equation and you plug them into the second equation to get what is your total revenue at break even. And that's just the units from the first equation times your selling price per unit.
I don't understand that.
Just go ahead and write it down. We'll work through an example and see if you have any residual questions. I have another one for you. The final one, and this one's really going to give the complexity or the complexion to this analysis and how you use it, is you can actually calculate a break-even price for a given sales forecast in terms of units by you take your fixed costs, divide it by the number of units, plus your variable cost per unit. Now, I do fully recognize this stuff's kind of floating around a little bit right now, and you need a concrete example to kind of nail it down. So it just so happens that Mary and I actually are looking for investors for our new company. We actually have a company, if you flip over to the next page, where we're going to make and sell birdhouses. Yep, we're going to go collect some. We just really think that one of the industries that could explode in Southern Oregon is to go grab some of that madrone and manzanita, that beautiful wood out there, and turn them into birdhouses. Now, the only problem is we're going to have to compete with about, 20,000 retirees who are also making birdhouses. So our market intelligence tells us that if we sell for a price of $10, units that have a variable cost of 4 when it comes to the wood and everything that we're going to use to make them, we're going to have fixed costs of $18,000. We're going to do this on we're going to do a yearly break-even calculation here. $18,000 per year. What we would like to know is the answer to the questions that are on the bottom of the page there. We would like to know how many birdhouses do we have to sell to break even, total sales or revenue at break even be, and then what would our break even price be at $10 or at, dang it, at 3,000 units, 6,000 units, and 9,000 units. So what we'd like you to do is to get together, you're going to have to plug those variables into the equations on the previous page, come up with the answers that I'm asking for on that. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that with your partner. If you need more time, I'll give you more time. But just get together with your partner, try to plug those variables into that equation, see what you guys come up with. And I hope you brought your checkbooks because we are looking for investors for our business here. How many birdhouses do we have to make? And this, our perspective is a year here. Of course, we could break it down into months. But in the year, how many birdhouses do we have to make to break even? 3,000. 3,000. Did everybody get that? Yes. So here's the calculation of that. Take the break-even units is $18,000 of fixed cost divided by your price of 10 minus your variable cost of 4, which gives you a contribution margin of 6, gives you 3,000 units. So give your partner a big high five. You guys did great on that one. Woo, you might say. Okay, now, what would be your total revenue or sales at break even? $30,000. Okay, good. So that's your 3,000 units times your $10 per unit or $30,000. Now, trick question. What's your total cost at when your revenue is $30,000? By definition, that's the definition of break even, right? Yeah, so your total cost would be, now let's break that down a little bit. I don't have that line up here, but let's just talk about that. The other way of coming at it, you know that it's where total revenue equals total cost, right? So it's $30,000. That's the way you can answer that. But the components of it would be how much fixed cost? 18,000. Okay, good. Plus what? How would you calculate the variable cost piece? $4 per unit times 3,000 units to break even is 12,000. 12,000 plus 18 is 30. Okay, good. Now, what would your break even price be at 3,000 units? Yeah, and you guys had to be thinking when you calculated that, hey, wait a minute, right? Now let's talk about what that means. If our sales forecast is actually 3,000 units, are we going to price just to break even? No, we want to make money, right? But what that $10 per unit tells us is what? Anything above that at 3,000 units will make a profit. Okay, good. So it's the threshold price. Now, if we actually take the 3,000 units, and what was my next point? 6,000. We doubled sales or production to 6,000. What would our break-even price become? 7. Okay? And does everybody see how this? Now we're taking the 18,000, and instead of spreading it across 3,000 units, we're spreading it across double that, which brings our fixed cost per unit, cuts that in half. You still have to add the $4 per unit of variable cost, so that's how you get to 7. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, now, the final one. I think if we did we double it again, or we take it to 9,000? Okay, what would be our break-even price at 9,000 units? Okay, $6. So this time the 18,000 is being spread across 9,000, bringing this to $2, add the 4 is 6. Now, in the real world, the way this gets used is you know your costs on one side, right? And then you're going to make a decision based on these various points of what your break-even would be at this point. But how are you going to decide how to actually position your product offering relative to competitive product offerings that are out there? This is the tricky part, all right? There's a little bit of art and a little bit of science to this. But what you're going to do is you're going to test out various market share strategies. You're going to test out a low price, high market share strategy and see what that total profit would be based on this calculation. And you might test out a premium price, less market share strategy, and you're going to try to optimize profit based on the basic output that this model gives you. That field of analysis, and I'd like you to write this down before we leave it, is called cost, volume, price analysis. Cost, volume, price analysis. And it's the analytical tool that it's at the heart of pricing, is being able to, first of all, characterize your costs in the way we talked about them on pages 9, 10, and 11. Combine that with the market intelligence that understands how you're competitively positioned out there, and then optimizes price based on that. If you don't know both those pieces of information, you're basically just trying to throw it against the wall and see if it sticks, right? That makes sense? Okay.